What do you want from me? Why do you care for me? Why do you know?
This is an emergency. That man is trying to kill you. If you want to live, you have to trust me. What is going on? I can see the future. Let's try that again.
Those girls have no idea the power they can unlock. I will kill them first.
Get down!
Madam Web, exclusively in movie theaters, February 14th.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Morbin time. Marvel and Sony have released a new Madam Web trailer with some new footage and Spider-Man Easter eggs, so we'll break it all down. I know there's a ton of questions about the timeline here. Where's this happening in the multiverse? Because all of them in the trailer have Spider-Man suits at some point, like they're Spider-Woman suits. They all have Spider-Man symbols on them, unlike the Venom character. You'd think that Venom would finally have gotten his Spider-Man symbol at this point. But that means that in this universe, a version of Spider-Man would have had to have been active already in the universe to give them the idea in the first place to use Spider-Man symbols. Like, he's meant to come first, Peter Parker, then they come inspired by him. Generally seems pretty chaotic, which is par for the course, but we'll explain what's going on. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. As they say in the trailers, the movie's coming out Valentine's Day weekend, basically, pretty soon. If you didn't think all the Morbius comparisons were funny, or you were making the Dakota Johnson 50 Shades of Spider-Man connection here, they actually released probably what is the most spicy promo I've ever seen a Spider-Man movie release.
So, while my character in the movie may be able to see the future, I also can. And I know what the future brings. I know that when you see Madam Web, you're gonna love it. In fact, I think you're going to see it twice.
They're really leaning into that whole 50 Shades of Spider-Man with that. Like, obviously, none of that energy is coming off the actual trailers. Like, I don't think there's any of that going on in the actual movie, but I love the way they're kind of leaning into the jokes and the memes here with the marketing. Like, do not shy away from the whole Morbin time of it all here. Even Jared Leto started leaning into the Morbius Morbin time jokes. I think that Sony kind of realized after all the Morbin time stuff that happened the last couple years that people will enjoy these kind of Spider-Man B movies, and that's really the vibe of the movie. It's kind of like a B movie with Spider-Man characters. Stuff that you go to watch going into the movie knowing that it's not going to be on the level of, say, like Spider-Man No Way Home, something quite as polished as that, but the movie is going to be a fun experience nonetheless. Like, there are a ton of movies out there that just are not meant to be good movies, like bad movies that are fun to watch. Like The Room, but I don't think that Madam Web is going to be quite that crazy. Like, it's not going to be like The Room. But you really need to temper your expectations about what it is you're going to see. Like, do not go into this movie expecting something on the level of Spider-Man No Way Home. All the test screenings have reportedly gone well, which means that people are having fun, like they're enjoying watching the movie. It doesn't mean the movie is going to win a ton of awards, it just means people are having fun watching it. So remember that when you go to see it. Generally, the movie seems like it's going to be a Terminator movie, like a Terminator plot inside the Spider-Man universe or a Spider-Man universe. Technically, this would be the Venom universe because all those Spider-Man spin-off movies Sony has been making are meant to be on the same Earth. We saw in the Venom movies, the Morbius post-credit scene. Really good example of this. Also this year, they're releasing the Kraven movie with Aaron Taylor Johnson. Cannot wait for the memes to come out of that. It's Kraven time, but you have the whole Quicksilver of it all. That'll also take place in the same universe as the Venom movies, as this Madam Web movie, as the Morbius post-credit scene. Not exactly sure where in the timeline Kraven is going to fall relative to Madam Web, because Madam Web seems like most of it takes place in the early 2000s, and inside the MC, like inside present day, like the Venom universe, for instance, we're into like 2025, 2026. A lot of these movies seem like their origin stories, for example, they take place much earlier in the timeline. Madam Web, obviously an origin story for that character, with her slowly coming into her powers from the comics, becoming more like comic book Madam Web, just a much younger version of the character. Fun Easter egg, too, in real life. If you didn't watch any of the Spider-Man the animated series episodes, they're fantastic. I would recommend watching it because a lot of the stuff that's happening in the modern movies, Marvel movies, Sony Spider-Man movies, they're actually doing stuff that they already did in Spider-Man the animated series. Really good example that Madam Web had huge arcs across that show. One of the big ones was Secret Wars. There was even an episode where Spider-Man travels to a universe where he actually meets Stan Lee at the Marvel offices in real life and learns that he's a fictional character that Stan Lee created. And to boot, Madam Web on that TV show was played by Stan Lee's wife, Joan, in real life. He even remarked on it during that episode where Spider-Man meets Stan Lee as his creator. Like, wait a minute, I'm fictional, you created me.
Not the same guy I've been writing about all these years.
Well, Stan,
We all have to grow up sometime, I suppose. Even us, characters of fiction.
Spider-Man, it's time to go.
Who is that exotic lady?
Love the jokes there too, like that was a wonderful lady. Who was that person? Oh, that was your wife in real life. This is what Dakota Johnson's version of the Madam Web suit from the comics is meant to look like. It's based on the original suit from the comics, but you can see they changed the Spider-Man symbol a little bit. I think this is mostly because they've tuned everything up to modernize some stuff and because they've changed everyone's backstories from the comics, like Madam Web, all the other Spider-Woman characters, all slightly different backstories. Even the Venom character, for instance, too, very different backstory than he had in the comics. What looks like is happening from all the trailers here is that Madam Web starts out in the early 2000s based on some of the markings on everything. She's a normal medic working at the hospital in New York City. Her co-worker here, played by Adam Scott, is actually supposed to be a version of young Uncle Ben. He's married to a young Aunt May. And I think this is when Peter Parker's mother, Mary Parker, is pregnant with him. Emma Roberts is supposed to be in the movie playing Peter Parker's mother. Notice in the footage she's super pregnant, like tiny baby Peter Parker about to be born. The main villain we see throughout the timeline in the trailers here is Ezekiel Sims from the comics. It seems like he's come back in time, Terminator style, to kill all these women before they become versions of Spider-Woman and a young Peter Parker before he can become Spider-Man. All these scenes of them in their Spider-Woman suits using their powers fighting the older version of him with the white hair obviously meant to be flash forwards to later in the timeline, setting up their backstory, explaining why he wants to time travel to the past to prevent this from ever happening. All this new footage they just released gives us a little bit more of the story, like it's a little bit clear, but I think it just supports a lot of the theories about what's going on with this whole Terminator plot and the time travel. At some point in the past, Madam Web's powers start to manifest. She starts having visions of the future, the way they're portraying her abilities now. I think she can see potential futures the way that Doctor Strange did when he was using the Time Stone in Avengers Infinity War to peep all their possible futures with Thanos. Like during the trailers, you see fights go down, then she says, let's try that again. She's probably seeing a potential future, not the actual future. She keeps having visions of Ezekiel coming to kill them here in the past. At some point, she starts to track down all the different girls to keep them safe, all while having these encounters with Ezekiel through the past. And it seems like the way they're presenting all this footage during the main part of the movie, when it's in the early 2000s, these younger versions of the characters don't totally know what's going on or why Ezekiel's trying to kill them. My early theory right now, and this is a big trope of a lot of movies like this, is that they'll probably have Ezekiel do an evil villain monologue where he tells them all why he's trying to kill them, and that's how they learn that they're eventually going to get powers and become these versions of Spider-Woman. Like he'll tell Madam Web that she's meant to be this crucial figure in the multiverse in the future as her powers grow, and she starts turning more into comic book Madam Web. Now, the comic book version of Madam Web is a little bit different. Like, she has the special floaty chair that she flies around in. She can actually open portals across the multiverse. And at least right now, at this point in the timeline, Dakota Johnson's Madam Web doesn't seem like she can do that yet. They may have just tuned her powers down for the purposes of this movie, like depowered her a little bit, or it might just be that she hasn't become that powerful yet, and eventually she will. Really easy way to explain how she connects a lot of these characters with Tom Holland's Spider-Man and everything happening in Secret Wars if they are going to cameo at any point during Secret Wars. Not really sure about that yet. The other versions of Spider-Woman that they have in all the trailers here are Sydney Sweeney, everybody recognizes, who's playing Julia Carpenter. Her suit looks pretty close to the comic book version of her suit. It's generally true of all the other characters too, like they're pretty close to their comic book suits. In the comics, she got her Spider-Man powers during an experiment where she was injected with a special spider venom concoction. She eventually took the title of Madam Web, and Cassandra Webb kind of bestows her powers on her, but I don't think they'll totally get into that plot during this movie. As you can see from the trailers, she basically has the same powers as Spider-Man, but she can also create psionic webbing, which is what you're seeing her do in the trailers. Celeste O'Connor, you also probably recognize in the trailers here, is playing Mattie Franklin from the comics. She's actually meant to be J. Jonah Jameson's niece in the comics. I don't know if they're going to do that inside this Venom universe, though. One of the funny things they started doing in all the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies is basically explaining that J.K. Simmons is every single version of J. Jonah Jameson in every single universe. He was also just in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse as the other versions of J. Jonah Jameson.
Tomorrow morning, Spider-Man, page 1 with a decent picture this time.
You're absolutely right, boss.
Shut up. Get out of here.
You got it, boss.
Her backstory is a little bit crazier, though. Like, her father was meant to be part of a secret group with Norman Osborn, Cassandra Webb, who all performed a ritual to give them random mystical powers so that everyone got different powers. Cassandra Webb gained immortality. Mattie took her father's place in the ritual and got pretty much the same type of powers as Spider-Man. I don't think they're going to get too crazy with the whole mystical side of Spider-Man's powers or like the Spider-Man totems, just because that was a big part of the Ezekiel storyline in the comics. I'm really just expecting them to just simplify all that stuff for the purposes of this movie and what's happening inside this Venom universe. So like all the storyline with the Inheritors, all that crazy stuff, not really expecting them to go there. And Isabella Merced, you also probably recognize, is playing Anya Corazon from the comics. Generally, my expectation for this movie is that they will wind up defeating Ezekiel in the past, and they will eventually become versions of Spider-Woman, but because of everything that's happening with the time travel, the timeline will have been changed, so something will change about the future for this universe's version of Peter Parker Spider-Man. There'll probably be some moment at the end of this movie, maybe like a post-credit scene that helps it connect with the other Sony spin-off movies like the Venom movie, like the Morbius post-credit scene, where we get a slightly better explanation of how these characters will cross over with those other Sony Spider-Man characters. Real big reminder though, this movie is happening in the early 2000s mostly, so way earlier in the timeline, so it would have to be like some sort of flash forward at the end of the movie if they're going to do that. Like Dakota Johnson's Madam Web would have to show up talking to a version of Tom Hardy's Venom or Morbius or somebody from one of those movies. Maybe because the Kraven movie is also coming out later this year, it'll be a Kraven kind of post-credit scene, because that movie also seems like it takes place earlier in the timeline. Generally though, this is all meant to be based on that Morbius post-credit scene. Sony is trying to set up their own spin-off Sinister Six franchise of movies, like a Sinister Six movie with a brand new version of the team set in that universe. The real question, though, is who's going to be the main version of Spider-Man in that universe. For those of you asking about Spider-Man 4, we probably won't hear too much about that for a couple more months. I think Marvel is just waiting because there's so much other stuff that they're working on right now. And the big thing this year for them is Deadpool 3. So we'll probably get that first Deadpool 3 trailer at the Super Bowl. Then after Deadpool 3 comes out, then we'll start hearing more about Spider-Man 4. I literally just posted that Ryan Reynolds Deadpool 3 teaser trailer. Click here to watch that. And click here to learn what's going on with Spider-Man 4 right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.